Thank you all again for joining us today. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully we'll have some more people join us here in a second. So yeah, let's get started. My name is Ariana. I work at OVAC, the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. Um, I handle artist relations here at OVAC, so I help artists apply to our programs, answer questions, and I also manage our grant programs for artists. So I manage the Thrive Grant program. Like I said, I help people apply, answer questions, and then I'm also the liaison for the artist that gets selected for the grant through the process of when they're completing their project over the grant period. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys today. And if you have any questions ever, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you guys. And I'll also provide my contact information at the end so you can have it. And then a little bit about OVAC. We're the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition. We were founded in 1988, and our mission is to grow and develop Oklahoma's visual arts community through education, promotion, connection, and funding. So we offer Thrive grants. We also have a smaller grant program that we do throughout the year. And then we also offer professional development opportunities like workshops and panel discussions over different topics to help artists in their artistic practice. And we also offer other programs like exhibitions throughout the year. So Thrive is only one of many programs that we do. Um, and then that's a little bit about me, about OVAC. The agenda for the presentation today, I'm going to go over what Thrive grants are, where this money comes from, what kind of projects we fund, what the application process is like, and the timeline of what to expect when you're applying and if you get selected for a grant. And at the end, I have a couple examples of projects we funded. And at the end, we'll also have time for questions. So if anybody has thoughts that come up, questions, feel free to take them down and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Um, so moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about our partner for this program. We partner with the Andy Warhol Foundation, which is really amazing and has been a great partnership. And this is where the money for Thrive grants comes from. In 2007, they established the Regional Regranting Program, where the Andy Warhol Foundation gives money to different organizations. As of right now, I believe there's over 30 different organizations that they partner with across the entire country. They give these organizations like us money, and then we redistribute that money to artists in our community. So we're really lucky to partner with them. And I feel like their values align really well with the things that we like to support. Obviously, visual art, risk-taking, supporting underrepresented artists. So yeah, we're really lucky to partner with them, and that's kind of where this money and this program came from. Then next, a little bit about what Thrive grants are. Um, so this is one of two grant programs we have at OVAC. This, for Thrive grants, we accept applications one time a year. And we have a total of $60,000 in grant money that we'll give to Oklahoma artists. And artists can choose if they would like to apply for a $5,000 grant or a $10,000 grant. The application process is the same whether you are applying for the $5,000 or $10,000 amount. But the $5,000 is better suited to like smaller scale projects, maybe just having like one or two artists that are mainly working on the project. Obviously, it has a smaller budget, and then the $10,000 Powerhouse grant is better suited to larger scale projects. If you have like a lot of collaborators involved in the project that obviously you want to pay, it'll be better suited to that. And then at the bottom, this is kind of the mission and goal of Thrive Grants, which is to provide support for artist-led visual art projects. that are ambitious, impactful, innovative, and are collaborative and engage the community. So there's different parts of this that I kind of wanted to highlight. Um, First, we have artist-led visual arts projects. Um, so these grants are specifically for individual independent artists. These grants aren't for nonprofits or for-profit businesses. So these projects are to be led and conceptualized by like an individual independent artist, or maybe a small collection, one or two artists working together to collaborate on a project. Um, Obviously for visual arts projects, we're the Oklahoma Visual Arts Coalition in partnership with the Andy Warhol Foundation for the visual arts. So that's a huge point that we want to fund visual arts projects. Sometimes projects we fund are multimedia and incorporate different mediums, performance art or sound or music. But the projects should come from a visual art background, and not try to kind of like shoehorn other media into this grant project. Um, then also the projects we want to support, like ambitious, impactful, innovative projects, which I'll talk a little bit more. These visual arts projects don't just have to be exhibitions. They can be structured in all different kinds of ways. And we really encourage that for people to like try out new things and structure their programs in different ways. And then we also want the projects to be collaborative and engage the community. Um, and that can happen in all different kinds of ways. And I'll kind of talk more about that as we go through the presentation. But you can collaborate with community members, with other artists, with community organizations that serve the community. And you can bring people together in all different kinds of ways to like make art, learn about art, have gatherings, panels, conversations, exhibitions, screenings, all kinds of different things. So that's a little bit about what the grants are. Next, this is just a little bit of information about the kinds of projects we fund. These are all examples of projects that we have funded in the past. So like I said, the projects don't just have to be exhibitions, they can be structured in all different kinds of ways. We've funded visual arts publications that are like independently published publications by artists. So like zines, small books of different kinds, collaborative art shows or exhibitions, educational arts programming. So like teaching the community how to do something or having people come together to learn something, community art making, installations like immersive installations, experiential things, and of course multimedia projects that are visual arts centered but may incorporate different kinds of art forms into the project, and more. I just added because, again, I don't want to limit what your visions are. I feel like this grant is really cool and funds a really large variety of different things. So these are just some things we funded in the past and ideas of maybe how to get you thinking differently about your project or ideas or how to engage people in whatever project you're proposing. And then this is more technical information about like what kind of projects are best suited to this grant and what kinds of people can apply to them. Obviously, I've covered a lot. It has to have a central focus in visual art and stem from a visual art idea. And it must be publicly accessible. And I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. Again, this can be your project can be accessible to the public in lots of different ways, and it kind of depends on what your project is. like if you're doing art or like film related type of project, you'll probably maybe have some kind of like screening where people will be able to come and see the project. Or obviously, if it's an exhibition of some kind, you'll probably have like a reception or an opening where people will be able to come and see the art. We've also had projects that have been virtually accessible, especially we started our first round of Thrive grants in 2021 when the pandemic was still a really big concern. And so some projects were more remotely or virtually accessible to people in different ways. So that can look different depending on what your project is. It just has to be accessible to the public in some way. Um, and again, it needs to be like collaborative and have a community impact. So whatever kind of community or audience you're trying to reach will also kind of inform how it will be accessible to them. Like if you're trying to reach people in a rural community, you're probably not going to have an exhibition in Oklahoma City that even though it might be free and accessible for people to come see it, you're not going to reach the audience that you want. So just things to think about. Um, Again, we're looking for things that are pushing the boundaries of the traditional exhibition experience. Um, and like in the previous slide, your projects can take all different kinds of forms. It doesn't just have to be an exhibition. And again, we're looking for collaborative projects, so collaborating with the community, different artists, um, having some kind of community impact or engagement is really important. Um, and that can look different for different projects. And then lastly, more technical things. Um, a lot of projects are collaborative, and if you have a group of people that are working on the project, we'll ask you to select a lead applicant, and this will be the person that will have their name on the application. They'll submit it. We'll have one person that will sign an agreement with us just to say, this is the project I'm going to do. It will be completed by this day, and I will use these grant funds to complete this project, etc. Um, and they're the ones that will like give the check money to for the grant. And it just kind of makes it a bit easier to have one point of contact. Instead of for some collaborative projects, there's lots of different people involved, so that'll be the primary point of contact. So you'll decide who that will be. And then also the projects for Thrive Grants have to be based in Oklahoma. Because like I said, the Warhol Foundation partners with organizations all across the country to do regranting programs like this. So if you are an artist based in another state or working with lots of artists based in different states to do a project somewhere else that's not in Oklahoma, I would encourage you to look at the Andy Warhol Foundation's regional regranting page on their website. And there might be, you know, an organization in whatever state you're wanting to do programming in that might be able to support it. Um, and then these are things on the bright side that are not best suited to this grant. So if you are younger than 21 or you're pursuing an MFA or BFA program, these grants are really designed to support adult independent artists. So we want the lead applicant to be over 21 at least. And we don't fund school projects. So those are just some things to take into consideration. We also don't fund 501c3s or nonprofits. Like I said earlier, these grants are for independent individual artists, and not for nonprofits or for-profit businesses. Also, if you have been awarded a grant in the past year, we ask people to take at least 1 year break before they reapply. So we aren't funding like the same artists in years back to back to back. and just kind of get some variety in the applications and have a chance for other people to apply. Um, and again, if the lead applicant on the project or the majority of the artists involved in the project are living outside of Oklahoma, you will not be eligible for this grant. And I would encourage you to look at other projects in other states that you might be able to apply for. Um, and then also, these projects are designed to be completed within a year, about a year, 11 months. So if you have a really large scale, long-term project that is going to take years to finish, it's probably not best suited to this grant. I'll talk a little bit more about what the specific timeline of the granting period is later in the presentation. But yeah, if you are working on something really long-term, um, I would probably encourage you to sit down and think about, is there a specific chunk or section or component that is compelling on its own as a project that you could apply for that can be completed within a year? Um, because yeah, the grant needs to be spent within a year and the projects need to be completed within that time. Um, so that's a little bit about what the grants are, where the money comes from, who is best suited to applying to the grants. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about physically applying and the kinds of things we ask for in the application. So for the applications, we use Submittable to collect the applications for all of our programs and both of the grant programs we have here at OVAC. It's a really great program. It's a third-party website that's designed specifically for collecting applications, so it's pretty easy to use. You can sign in and create an account with them, and then you can look back whenever you submit applications for our organization and lots of other organizations use Submittable. It'll save all of your applications in your account, which is really handy. So you have like the history to look back on. Um, and it's really nice because I took a little screenshot here. You can type your answers directly into this digital form on Submittable, and then you can save a draft if you're not ready to submit your application yet. So you can keep coming back to it and working on it. And then when you're done, you can submit it. Um, I have the website for where to find the applications and everything at the end of the presentation. If you go onto our webpage and click the apply button, it'll take you directly to this form for you to fill out the application. I would really encourage you to look at it as soon as you can if you haven't already. It has all the questions and everything all in one place. Some of the questions do have word limits, like this one here. So I'd encourage you to look at that so you're prepared when you're compiling all of your information. Um, but yeah, it's really easy to use. I would just recommend checking it out ahead of time. And also, if for any reason um, it's difficult for you or you can't submit your application through Submittable for any reason, just let me know and we can figure out a way for you to submit your application a different way. Like if you don't have access to the internet or any kinds of challenges or you need accommodations for any reason, like I said, just let me know and we can figure out another way for you to submit your application. But this is the main way that we accept like 99% of our applications. So that's a little bit about physically submitting your application. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward and easy to use. And then these are the different components of the application that we'll ask you to submit and questions for you to answer. So yeah, first obviously pick a project title. And then we'll also ask for a short project summary where you'll just kind of talk about what the project is. And like I mentioned earlier, everyone will select if they'd like to apply for a $5,000 or $10,000 grant amount. You'll just select one or the other in the application, and all the questions will be the same, regardless of what category you're applying for. We'll also ask for a list of collaborators. Um, so, if you have multiple artists that are collaborating on the project with you, or you're partnering with like community organizations or, um, whatever kind of collaborators you have, we'll ask about them. You'll include their names, and like a bio and talk about like how they'll contribute to the project. Um, and then we also have, I feel like these two questions are the more kind of like narrative long form questions. It'll ask about uh, who the audience for your project is and community engagement, like how you'll be engaging the community. And then another question will be asking about the desired outcomes of the program and the importance of funding. Um, and then we'll also have a question about public presentation. So like I said earlier in the presentation, the project will have to be publicly accessible for the community to engage with in some way. So this is asking, how that will happen. Like, do you have venues where you will be hosting the project for people to come and see it? And if so, like, what are those places and how will people be interacting with the project there and where is it? Stuff like that. Um, and then there are some more straightforward questions, I guess. We'll ask for a timeline, which will just kind of be a list of goals and milestones that you'll be hitting in order to complete your project in the appropriate amount of time. We'll also ask for a budget. So what are all the things you'll need to purchase and pay for in order to complete your project? We also have a sample budget spreadsheet on our website, so you can check that out. Um, And yeah, you can arrange your budget in like a Word document or a spreadsheet or PDF or whatever, and then upload it to the application. We'll also ask for a CV or resume from the lead applicant, and that will just kind of show, a history of what kind of art and projects you've done in the past, and kind of support, these are the things I've done in the past, and I'm able to complete this project, and I kind of know what I'm doing. Here's like my history of what I have done. Then we'll also ask for an artist statement, which is a short statement, usually like a page long or shorter, talking about the kind of art you make, what mediums you use, themes that you portray in your work. Um, and a lot of people that apply for the Thrive grant have community related projects that they do a lot. So you could talk about, you know, what that looks like in your artistic practice. Um, and then lastly, we'll ask for relevant images. And these also are kind of different depending on what your project is. You can submit images of past artwork that you've created, to show the kind of artwork that you usually make. Um, Again, if you're an artist that does a lot of community engaged work in different ways, um, like I feel like we have a lot of people that teach art. You can show, these are workshops that I've taught in the past, or images of like student artwork or something like that to show your expertise in your field. So yeah, like images of past programming, things like that. You can also submit like concept art or sketches or renderings of the project that you're envisioning creating for this grant. Um, so those are the kinds of things that we'll be looking for and will help um, people reading your application to understand fully like what your project is, what it's going to look like, and the kinds of things you've done in the past, and how that will inform what you're making next. Um, and yeah, all of these questions are really just, like I said, to see the full scale of what your project is going to be, And at the end of reading all of your materials, you just want whoever's reading it to have a really clear picture of what this project is going to be and how it will be accomplished. Like through the timeline and budget, how long it's going to take, how much it's going to cost, like the public presentation, where will the project be, and how will people be able to see it, how they'll engage with it, what it'll look like, all those different kinds of things. So those are the things we'll ask for in the application. And like I said, look in submittable and it'll give you more details about all of these questions. And if there's word limits on any of these questions, it'll list that in submittable. I also have a couple of writing tips for when you're writing your responses in the application. Um, First of all, answer every question thoroughly, which sounds really basic. But for example, this is the question about public presentation in the application. It says list secured or potential venues for the project, indicating those that are confirmed, and how the community will interact with the project. So really that's kind of like three different components of this one question. So you want to make sure that you're answering all of them. So it says list secured or potential venues. So that might just be a list of venues, but then you'll need to indicate, here's a list of 5 potential ones. One of them is for sure like secured and we can have our project be displayed there. The other 4, maybe are like backups or we're trying to secure like one additional one. Or, maybe you don't have any secured venues yet, but you have 5 potential ones and you can list, like 3 of them I've already been in contact with to discuss this project. 2 of them are other potential backup venues. Just provide as much information as you can. And then it also says, how will the community interact with the project? So, what exactly will be going on at that venue, what parts of your project will be there, and how do you envision people coming to the space and interacting with your project there? Um, so yeah, because some projects have multiple components. So again, we're just trying to get an idea of all the different parts of the project and what it'll look like and where it will be happening. Um, and also having some kind of secured venue is definitely great because it uh, lets the people reading your application know like you've done research, you've talked to these people, like you've really thought this out, and you have a confirmed place for it to happen. And like I said, if you don't have something that's secured 100%, at least indicating that you have done research, contacted people, talked to people is always good. Because I think the last thing you want to do, for example, for this question, is just list a list of venues and include no other information, because then that's not answering this question fully. It's not indicating, are these confirmed? Are these potential? How will the community interact? It doesn't give any information. And I feel like a lot of the time when people just list a list of venues where the project could potentially happen, it just kind of indicates like you've kind of done like the bare minimum of research and we don't know if any of these are confirmed or not, which is not good. So just an example of answering the questions thoroughly and recognizing that some questions kind of might have multiple questions within one question, or multiple aspects you need to answer. The second tip is assume the people reading your application don't know who you are or what the project is. Because I'll talk a little bit more about the selection process of how the applications or the grantees get accepted. But this will probably be the case. It might be the case that, maybe 1 or 2 people, oops, just accidentally scrolled to the next slide. Maybe 1 or 2 people reading the applications do know you, maybe, but you will really probably have no idea who's reading your applications. So it's safest to just assume that these people don't know you at all, don't know the project at all. Um, and I think it's a good mindset to get in. So when you're answering all these questions, you're making sure you're providing as much detail in as clear a way as you can to fully illustrate your whole project and what you're trying to achieve for someone that doesn't know anything about it. And then also read all the guidelines thoroughly and ahead of time. Because yeah, the last thing you want to do is read one of the guidelines when you're almost ready to submit your application and then realize, oh, maybe this isn't the grant for me for one reason or another. When you could have saved all this time compiling this application by just making sure you meet all the guidelines and requirements and everything ahead of time. Um, so we have a ton of like FAQs and all of our eligibility criteria and everything are on our web page for Thrive on our website. Um, so I'd say first step, um, just read everything on the website if you can, because I feel like it's really helpful to just understand the kinds of things we're looking for, the eligibility requirements, the guidelines, and what to expect. Um, yeah, so those are some tips for getting ready to submit your application and writing it. And then also here are some other frequently asked questions that I get from people that are interested in applying. How many applications can I submit? We ask people to just submit one application at a time. I think if people submit more than that, it opens kind of like a whole can of worms. So yeah, just submit one application at a time. If you don't get the grant this year, you can always reapply next year with the same project, or get some feedback from me maybe and tweak it a little bit to make it stronger, or just like next year submit a completely different project if you find something else that you're interested in. So please just submit one application at a time. And if you have a lot of ideas or multiple ideas and you're not sure which direction to go in, you can feel free to contact me and we can talk about, maybe what's most interesting to you or which of the ideas might work best for this grant or what is feasible to accomplish in the grant period, things like that. Second question, how important is community engagement for the grant? It's really important, and I encourage people, again, to kind of, I guess, think outside the box of, um, what your audience is, who you're trying to engage in this project, and how you're doing it. Um, because exhibitions are like a really common way of displaying visual art projects. But there's lots of different ways that you can engage people in projects. So, sometimes people submit like an idea for an exhibition and then to add a little bit of community engagement, they're like, I'll add an artist talk and that'll fulfill, more of the community engagement. But I would just encourage people to dig a little deeper, like think more outside the box, think about what are you really trying to convey? What kind of people are you really trying to reach? What do you hope people take away from it? And maybe like thinking about these things can help you create some community engagement in your project, in like a new way that like deepens engagement for the people that are attending your project. Um, What else? Also, can nonprofits receive a Thrive grant? Talked about this a little bit already. No, we will only give Thrive grants to individual independent artists. Um, this is another thing that is listed on our website, but I still get questions about it. So, you know, again, read the eligibility things and everything on the website because it will save you time. Um, and then this is a tricky question that I do get questions about quite frequently, which is kind of a nuanced thing. But should I apply for the $5,000 grant category instead of the $10,000 grant category? And it's a really tricky question because there's not like a strict answer to this. But I think it stems from people kind of like having a little bit of doubt about, the category they should apply for and think maybe it would be easier for me to get the grant if I apply for the smaller amount instead of the $10,000 amount. And if you're kind of like having questions about this, I would encourage you to just sit down and like really get clear about what the vision is for the project, what you really want to achieve, and then think about the budget. Like if this is your vision, this is what you want to achieve with your project and what you want to make and what you want to do. What are all the things you're going to need to buy and pay for to make it a reality? And just like write down everything you can think of and start pricing it out and adding up how much it's going to cost. And also, I know like recently the prices of things I feel like are probably going up for some things, and prices, depending on what kind of materials you're buying, can fluctuate a lot. So also take that into account. But yeah, start getting clear about what you're going to create, how much it's really going to cost. And if you're writing down all of the things you need to buy, and there's so many different things like materials, a lot of people, they might print like flyers or do some kind of advertising to advertise their project when it's happening. You might need to pay for like mileage or lodging somewhere if you need to travel to create the project. Again, if you're paying collaborators that are working with you, you also want to pay yourself. You might need subscriptions to different things to create your artwork, like different programs like Adobe, or you might be creating a website for your project or something, and that might be an expense. Like there's so many different things that you might need to pay for a project. So write down all of what those might be. If you're like pretty easily going over the $5,000 mark, that might be a sign that you should apply for the $10,000 one. And again, don't forget to pay yourself. In our budget, I think we recommend our budget template on our website. I think we recommend allocating like 20 to 30% of the budget to pay yourself. Because we'll talk about more at the timeline in a little bit. But these projects can take, 10, 11 months to complete. So you want to pay yourself for that time that you're investing into the project and any collaborators, which can take up a huge part of the budget. Um, and also, um, maybe you feel scared to apply for the full $10,000 amount, but just defaulting to apply for the 5,000 isn't going to necessarily mean it's going to be easier for you to get the grant or make your application stronger. And honestly, if people are reading through the application and they see, oh, they applied for the $5,000 amount, but they're not paying themselves, they're not paying their collaborators enough. And, this is an intensive project that's going to take a lot of resources and time to complete. Um, it might end up hurting your application if you don't allocate enough resources for your project. So I'd say just think about it and try to think what would work best for you and for the project. Um, you know, we select a mixture of $5,000 and $10,000 grants to award every year. So don't think that there's a right answer on this question. It really is just like what is going to work best for your project. Um, Also, I get questions about how many applications we usually get and how many we fund. Like I said, we fund a mixture of $5,000 and $10,000 grants. Um, we got the most applications the first year that we did the Thrive grants, which is kind of not surprising. It was like a big new exciting thing. But probably around somewhere between 30 to 40 applications is what we'll end up getting. And then we'll award a range of $5,000 and $10,000 projects. And these are the ones we've funded in the past and applications we've received over the last 4 years. Next up, I want to talk a little bit more about how the applications are selected. So on the screen, we have our scoring matrix, and some information about the people reading your applications. So for this Thrive Grants program and the other grant program we have at OVAC, we utilize a selection committee to make these decisions. So for Thrive, the selection committees are composed of someone that has received a Thrive grant in the past because they have experience going through the program. We also have somebody that works for another organization that partners with the Andy Warhol Foundation for the regranting program. So like last year, for instance, we had somebody from an art organization in Kansas City serve on the committee because those people have experience operating regranting programs like this in different places. And then we also usually have like artists from Oklahoma and arts administrators of different kinds. Sometimes, yeah, like people that work at art organizations, professors, freelance artists, all different kinds of people. So those are the people that'll be reading your application, and they will evaluate every application we get based on these criteria in the scoring matrix. So we have career altering potential, artistic merit of the project, community impact, and ability to complete the project are the main criteria. Then we also have priority consideration points. So if your project serves an underrepresented region of Oklahoma, usually these are like rural areas. If you involve Native people or people of color as collaborators in your project, or if you have outstanding collaboration, you can get additional points just because we want to serve these people and support these projects happening in Oklahoma. So I would say like usually every project probably gets at least one of these, having outstanding collaboration, serving in an underrepresented area, or having people of color uh, as collaborators on your project. So these are things to keep into consideration when you're answering the questions in the application. And again, our selection committee will review all the applications against the scoring matrix, score all of them, and then that'll kind of give us like a baseline of, what projects did everyone really like unanimously, which ones are kind of like high scoring and rising to the top. And that kind of gives us hopefully a little bit of an objective way to look at all of them and start making those decisions. And then this is the timeline of what to expect for the application process and for awarded grantees. So applications are already open. They opened on April 1st, and they will close on June 1st. So you'll need to submit your application by that day. I'm having this webinar today. I'll also be having office hour appointments May 13th through the 15th. And these are individual appointments. I have my contact information in this presentation so you all can see it. And I'll send it to you all in a follow-up email. But yeah, these are individual like 30-minute appointments. We can just like talk about questions you have. I can talk more about the application process. I can even read a draft of your application and give you some feedback. I don't serve on the selection committee that selects the grantees, but I do facilitate the whole process. I read over all the applications we receive. I sit in on the meeting and hear what people have to say throughout the process. So I can give feedback based on the things that I've seen um, operating this program in the past. Um, and also, if your project isn't selected, um, I can give you feedback after that um, as well. So I can give you feedback ahead of time after. Just let me know if that would be helpful and we can set something up. So yeah, applications close June 1st. Um, we have to have time to read over all the applications and have a meeting to decide the grantees. And then all applicants will be notified if you were selected or not by the end of July. And then the grant funding period will be August 2025 to June 2026. So that's like about 11 months. And the projects just have to be completed by June 2026, the end of June. Um, and so sometimes people have like smaller scale projects that are completed within like 6 months. A lot of people work on their projects for the majority of this funding period and take like 10 or 11 months to finish. Um, so yeah, just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your timeline and the scope of your project. It'll just need to be completed within this time period. Um, and then funds are dispersed for this grant. If you're selected, we'll give you some of the funds right when you're notified after we've gotten all your paperwork and everything. We'll give you a large amount up front. Then we'll distribute some at the halfway point and then the last installment at the end. Um, and then also throughout this grant funding period, we'll have like periodic check-ins where I'll check in with the grantees and like see how everything's going, see if they have questions. And we usually have a Thrive mentor who is someone more experienced than me with visual arts projects and like community projects and um, getting large grants and things like that that can help also answer questions and just be like an additional resource for the people that got the grant and are working on these projects. Um, so yeah, those are kind of milestones to expect throughout the process. Next up, I was just going to talk about two examples of past recipients um, and kind of how their projects fit into the goals of Thrive. So our first one I wanted to talk about was Caleb Lindsay. His project was an experimental film and video art workshop and exhibition. So obviously it fits into visual arts. It's an experimental film project. It's very collaborative because it was a multi-week workshop class. Um, so I believe he had about 8 artists that were in the workshop. They would meet every week and work on their film projects. And Caleb has experience teaching in the past, so he wanted to continue to do that. And uh, he's based in Tulsa, but some of the artists were based in Tulsa, some in OKC, and they would come together for these classes. Um, and then obviously for the community engagement, it's kind of based around like learning, um, learning technical art skills. Um, and then it was also publicly accessible because at the end of the workshop, all the artists completed a short film and then they had a public screening. So this was like a poster for the screening that I actually just went to on May 3rd, and it was really great. And it was so cool to see all the film projects that all of these artists were making. Um, so yeah, it was like a really great project, and I think a good example of how it fits into Thrive grants. Like it's collaborative because all these artists are creating different projects. It's really engaging, like deeply engaging because they're meeting multiple times. Like all these artists get to meet each other and learn new techniques. And then also the public is able to engage by like seeing the screenings of the short films and like learning about the artists. Um, so that's a really great project that Caleb was chosen in 2024. And so he's part of the most recent cohort that is about to wrap up their projects in June of this year. Um, and then another example was Katrina Ward. Her project was Stitching Memories, a quilt memorial for Greenwood. And she was a 2022 grantee, so she worked on her project from like um, August 2022 to June 2023. And hers was a community quilt project. They made like multiple community quilts for the to create a memorial of the massacre that happened in Greenwood in Tulsa. Um, and again, it's a visual arts project. Um, because fiber arts are a type of visual art. It's collaborative because Katrina and the people she was working with solicited quilt squares from people in Oklahoma, also I believe like across the country, and they would combine them to make these community quilts. It was really engaging and accessible. She would also host some like public workshops where people could come and work on the quilt squares, and share information about what quilt memorials are, because this is like a thing that has been used as a vehicle of memorializing different events in recent history. And then it was also publicly accessible because like this photo is an installation shot whenever they were installing um, the quilts in Tulsa for people to view them. So it was kind of accessible in multiple different ways, like and through the creation of the artwork and then also being able to see the artwork at the end that was completed. Um, and the opening, I believe, of the exhibition was in tandem with the Black Wall Street Legacy Fest. So that's another example of, thinking about who is the community that you're trying to reach, and how can you make your project accessible to them. Obviously, people that, you know, have a vested interest in Black Wall Street, are interested in learning about the history. Um, Having this project be located near the festival and in Tulsa is like a good way to reach those people. And then also having like the um, community events at like libraries and community centers where people could come together and work on the quilts is like a great way to be in a space that's already publicly accessible, like a library or community center, that's free where people can just like come together and work on things. So yeah, just another really good example of lots of engagement, very publicly accessible on different levels, and also just like a really interesting visual art project that has like a great meaning and purpose of creating this memorial quilt. Um, so yeah, that kind of concludes the presentation. I think we only have about like 5 minutes left. I had a lot of information that I was going over. Hopefully it was helpful. But yeah, I'm Ariana. Again, I manage the Thrive grants, so please reach out to me if you have any questions. My email is here. I'll also be sending a follow-up email to all of you guys with more information, so I'll send my contact information. Um, for office hour appointments, I do sometimes have in-person meetings if people like doing those. Sometimes we'll meet on Zoom. Sometimes I'll just have phone calls with people. And our office is located in Oklahoma City. And this is our website, the OVAC website. And if you go to the Thrive page, it has all the information about Thrive. Um, we also have another grant program we do at OVAC. It's just called Grants for Artists. Artists can apply for grants in 4 different categories. And this is a smaller scale grant project, but it's really great for people getting grants for the first time. Thrive is really for like community engaged projects that in art an artist conceptualizes and initiates. But if you're like participating in like a group show or a program organized by another organization or something, this might be a good way to like get some support for that. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. I think I saw something in the chat, so I'm gonna see. Okay, someone just said they were leaving early. Totally fine. Okay, but does anybody have any questions about anything? Um, we have a few minutes left if anybody does have questions. You can drop them in the chat or just feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Oh, Viola asks, where can we find information about 2024 Thrive Grant projects that are currently on view? Caleb Lindsay's project is on view now. I think it's viewable on Saturdays. And Gabriel Friedman is an awardee that was funded in 2024, and he's having a book release party for the book he published in Oklahoma City next Saturday, May 17th at Little D Gallery. So I can send more information in a follow-up for you guys about that too. I think those are two that came to mind that are uh, accessible right now or coming up soon. Um, any other questions from anybody? Kelly and Randall say, no questions, but thank you for your time. Thank you guys. I'm glad that everyone attended. Um, and yeah, if you guys have any other questions that come to mind, feel free to send me an email. And I'm always happy to help and answer questions. Okay. Well, if nobody has any other questions, I will call the meeting good. Thank you guys so much. And I hope to talk to you all again soon. Bye.